Have you ever wondered why the Middle East, a region with such a rich history and cultural heritage, is constantly plagued by conflict? The roots of many of these disputes stretch back over a century to a time when Western colonial powers made decisions that would shape the future of this region in profound and often devastating ways. Today, we're going to unravel the complex history behind some of the Middle East's most enduring conflicts. We'll explore how early 20th century colonial interventions set the stage for the turmoil we see today. From the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to the Iraq Civil War, the Syrian Civil War, and the Bahrain conflict, each of these struggles is deeply intertwined with the legacies of colonial rule and foreign intervention. By understanding these historical contexts, we can gain a clearer picture of the present-day challenges facing the Middle East, and perhaps even glimpse paths toward a more peaceful future. So join us on this journey through history and geopolitics as we explore the intricate web of events and decisions that continue to shape the Middle East. Whether you're a history buff, a political junkie, or just curious about the world, this deep dive into the past will provide valuable insights into some of today's most pressing issues. Section 1: Israeli-Palestinian Conflict. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is deeply entrenched in the history of colonialism and the decisions made by Western powers in the early 20th century. At the heart of this conflict is the British mandate over Palestine, a territory that had been inhabited by both Jews and Arabs for centuries. In 1917, the British government issued the Balfour Declaration, which expressed support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. This declaration was motivated by various political reasons, including the desire to gain support from the Jewish community during World War I. However, the British failed to adequately consider the implications of this declaration for the Arab population that had been living in Palestine for generations. The influx of Jewish immigrants encouraged by the British led to significant tensions and conflicts between the Jewish and Arab communities. The Arabs, who constituted the majority of the population at the time, felt threatened by the increasing number of Jewish settlers and the growing political influence of the Zionist movement. The situation was further complicated by Britain's conflicting promises to both the Jews and the Arabs. On one hand, the British promised to support the establishment of a Jewish homeland in Palestine. On the other hand, they had also assured the Arab leaders of their support for Arab independence in the region. These conflicting promises created a sense of betrayal and mistrust among the Arab population, leading to a series of violent confrontations. By the time the British Mandate ended in 1948, the stage was set for a full-scale conflict. The United Nations proposed a partition plan to divide Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states, but this plan was rejected by the Arab leaders. The ensuing war resulted in the establishment of the State of Israel and the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, an event referred to as the Nakba, or catastrophe, by the Palestinian people. The British mishandling of the situation, their failure to foresee the consequences of their actions, and their inability to mediate effectively between the conflicting parties set the stage for a conflict that has persisted for decades. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict remains one of the most intractable disputes in the world, with both sides suffering immense losses and the prospects for a peaceful resolution appearing distant. Section 2: Iraq Civil War. The Iraq Civil War is another conflict rooted in foreign intervention and the consequences of toppling established regimes without a clear plan for the aftermath. The U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003 aimed to dismantle Saddam Hussein's regime, which was accused of possessing weapons of mass destruction and supporting terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda. However, the invasion and subsequent occupation of Iraq revealed a lack of understanding of the country's complex social and political fabric. The removal of Saddam Hussein created a power vacuum that various factions within Iraq sought to fill. The U.S.-led Coalition Provisional Authority made several critical errors, such as disbanding the Iraqi army and banning members of the Ba'ath Party from participating in the new government. These decisions alienated many Iraqis, particularly the Sunni Arab community, and contributed to the rise of insurgent groups. The power vacuum and disenfranchisement of Sunni Arabs facilitated the emergence of extremist groups like Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which later evolved into ISIS. The group's brutal tactics and territorial ambitions led to widespread violence and instability, drawing in regional and international actors into the conflict. The struggle for power and control in Iraq continues to this day, with various factions vying for influence and the country's future remaining uncertain. Section 3. Syrian Civil War. The Syrian Civil War is a multifaceted conflict that has drawn in numerous regional and international actors, making it one of the most complex and devastating wars in recent history. The conflict began in 2011 as part of the Arab Spring, a wave of protests and uprisings across the Arab world calling for political reforms and greater freedoms. In Syria, these protests were met with violent repression by the regime of President Bashar al-Assad, leading to a full-scale civil war. The war has pitted Assad's regime, backed by allies like Russia and Iran, against a diverse array of opposition groups, including moderate rebels, Kurdish forces, and extremist factions such as ISIS. The involvement of regional powers, particularly Iran and Saudi Arabia, has added a proxy war dimension to the conflict, with each side supporting different factions to advance their strategic interests. Iran supports Assad due to their long-standing alliance and strategic interests in maintaining influence in Syria. On the other hand, Saudi Arabia and its allies support various rebel groups in an attempt to weaken Iran's position in the region. This external involvement has prolonged the conflict and increased its complexity, making a resolution difficult to achieve. The humanitarian toll of the Syrian civil war has been staggering, with hundreds of thousands killed, millions displaced, and widespread destruction of infrastructure. The conflict has also had significant regional and global implications, contributing to the refugee crisis, fostering extremism, and reshaping the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. Section 4. Bahrain Conflict. The conflict in Bahrain, though less internationally known, is another example of the region's complex interplay of internal and external factors. Bahrain has long been a focal point of geopolitical rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Iran. The country is ruled by the Sunni al-Khalifa family, while the majority of its population is Shia, leading to underlying sectarian tensions. In 2011, inspired by the Arab Spring, Bahraini citizens took to the streets demanding greater political freedoms and an end to discrimination against the Shia majority. The government responded with a harsh crackdown, aided by Saudi Arabia, which sent troops to support the Bahraini regime. The intervention was driven by Saudi Arabia's concern over the potential for Shia-led uprisings to spread to its own Shia-populated regions. Iran, on the other hand, has provided rhetorical and allegedly material support to the Bahraini opposition, viewing the unrest as an opportunity to expand its influence in the Gulf. The conflict in Bahrain thus represents a microcosm of the broader Saudi-Iranian rivalry, with both powers vying for dominance in the region. Section 5. Failed democratization attempts. The Arab Spring of 2011 brought a wave of optimism for democratic reforms across the Middle East. In Egypt, longtime dictator Hosni Mubarak was forced to resign following widespread protests. The subsequent period saw the election of Mohammed Morsi, a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, and the drafting of a new constitution. However, fears among the secular elites and the military about the Brotherhood's intentions led to a coup in 2013, bringing General Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to power and ending Egypt's brief experiment with democracy. In Iran, the 2009 Green Movement protests, sparked by allegations of electoral fraud, represented a significant challenge to the ruling regime. However, the government's brutal crackdown on protesters and subsequent consolidation of power by hardline elements dashed hopes for democratic reforms. The failure of these democratization efforts in Egypt and Iran highlights the difficulties of achieving lasting political change in a region marked by deep-seated authoritarianism and external interference. Conclusion. As we've seen, the roots of many of the Middle East's most enduring conflicts lie in the early 20th century colonial interventions and the decisions made by Western powers. The arbitrary borders and disregard for the region's complex social and ethnic landscapes have had lasting consequences, contributing to ongoing violence and instability. Understanding this history is crucial for making sense of the present-day challenges and seeking paths toward a more peaceful future. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history and geopolitics of the Middle East. If you found this video insightful, please like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth analyses of global issues. Your support helps us bring you more content that informs and engages. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.